Hi there, my name is Tyler, and welcome to another video of EDEF 607. And good news, I did not die from last week's sickness, so I have been able to grace the world with another amazing reading response. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about a whole new topic I think is very interesting. I think it's a good wrap-up for the entire class, and how we can kind of tie this all up in one big bow. Like I said, my name is Tyler. There's Becky over there, and so I'm going to go through a few of the readings. We actually had 3 this week by actually some really good sources. One by Glass. One was kind of a collection of different teachers' magazines, newsletter articles, and then we also have Shapiro as well we're talking about today. And so I'm going to try and get through this really fast because no one wants to sit through a 15-20 minute video, so I'm going to go on and cut to the chase. So this week's theme is all about making change, not only in the classroom, but in the world. And I think that, as educators, I think that's our goal, is to encourage our students to be world changers, to be innovators, and a willingness to make the world better. Because I think that's, as teachers, we need to make sure that the next generation not only is as good as us, but they surpass us and they're better than us. So, starting here with Glass, one quote that I really saw that I liked quite a bit was, it was on page 249. It says, "There are no answers here on how to repair the world of our public schools. If anything, the country has too many problems, solutions to education's supposed ills." And so it's just kind of talking about how, as a nation, as a culture, as a society, we really struggle with a lot of issues, whether it be violence, whether it be different debates such as gay marriage, social issues such as that. We have so much stuff going on that a lot of times it's hard to kind of really think about education, because it kind of, in a way, takes the back burner on things. And so, like I said, this whole week's about innovation and change. And so that was Glass. But going into the second group of readings, which is on D2L, it's all talking about how, actually, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. I'm going to switch up here a little bit. Going to stick with the theme of a little bit of gloom and doom here. But Shapiro's talking about how there are, again, with those issues, how America is really affected by that. And he made a couple of points that there are some I agree with, some I'm not so agreeing on. One in particular is this quote right here. "The number of firearms in circulation in the United States is estimated to be at over 190 million. It sometimes produces the horrifying outbursts of school violence that, from time to time, focus a nation's shocked attention. But less visible are the thousands of other victims of violence." So, I understand where Shapiro's going with this, because it's talking about how America has so many guns in regulation. The only problem is that Shapiro makes it sound like it's the guns that are the issue, and I'm a firm believer, this is my personal belief, is that I believe it's the gunman and not the gun that actually causes that. And that we need to not just monitor guns and gun manufacturing, but also the people who actually own them and who buy them. Because, it's a human condition thing. Saying that a gun kills somebody basically it's this you saying, "Oh, I eat McDonald's every day of the year, which means I'm fat, so it's McDonald's fault for I'm fat. It's not my own fault." So in this case, it's not the gunman's fault, it's the gun. So, but that was just a quick 10-minute political statement by Tyler. Just by the way, just a reminder, vote for Tyler Brumfield, 2028 presidential election. So anyway, there were a couple more things that I really liked in this page. And so it talked about change innovation. And so Shapiro talked about steps that we need to take before we can really change the world. And so one thing that, there's actually 5 steps that Shapiro provided. There is a step 1, which is where you stand depends on where you sit. And so basically that just means that wherever you're from, that's going to shape how you view the world. For example, one thing I really liked is how he used the Israel and Palestinian example on page 159, where it talks about how you have Israelis who believe that is deemed by God and their holy book that that land they are sitting on belongs to them. While on the other side, Palestinians believe that they are pushed out of their land and that America planted them in there. So you have two different views on a piece of land, and so that all depends on where you're from. Same thing with America is that Americans believe that we're the greatest country on earth, and that we do no wrong. And same thing with a lot of countries. Wherever you're from, you're gonna feel like your home team or your home country is the best. Like for example, UVA and Tech fans. I'm sure Tech fans believe that their football team is absolute best, while UVA fans think their team is the best, even though our record's terrible. That's just an example of that. And so I really like that. I like that example quite a bit. And so then, step 2 was first justice, then peace. And it says, Shapiro says, well, here it says, violent crimes, war riots, and insurgencies, even terrorism, are almost always in some way related to the imposition of injustice on individuals or collectivities. And so I'm glad that Shapiro included the almost always, because there are some times where just because when somebody, for example, terrorism or you kill somebody, doesn't mean you were wrong in some way. It could mean either you had a psychological issue, or it's some sort of religious doctrine that says you can. And that religious doctrine's been over many faiths over the time of history. And so basically saying that we need to, before we can really achieve peace, we need to address the injustice that a lot of people around the world face. One thing I also talked about on page 163, also about how some people live on only $2 a day, and how other countries face a lot of poverty, more so than Americans do. And so we have to really talk about why do we have injustice the way we do, and how can we fix it, and how can we address that. And I don't have expertise to really say one way or another how we do that, but I agree with Shapiro saying that we need to talk about the injustice before we really talk about peace, because without justice there will be no peace. So then step 3 is somebodies and nobodies. Basically mean there's always going to be someone on top, there's going to be always someone on bottom. And just on page 167 it says, not surprisingly, their effects are to exacerbate and self-conscious and anxiety of the young, to promote an even more intense scrutiny of themselves in relation to their peers. And basically just saying that it's all about image. It's all about, can I buy the fanciest dress, or I need the best gaming console. It's always about the somebody who has everything, and then the nobody who's, kind of clinging on, trying to pull themselves up the ladder. And so, kind of going back to where we need to have justice before we have peace, talking about how we need to try and eliminate and shorten the gap of the people who are somebody and people who are nobody, by always taking people for face value and always saying, you have value, regardless of where you're from, regardless of who you are, what your culture is, what your race, whatever, you bring something to the table. So now, going on to step 4 that Shapiro talks about, it's about the threatened self. And to give a quick summary of that, it's all about whatever's different than us, we feel challenged by it a little bit. We feel a little bit out of place by it, something that we're not used to. And in the book it talks about, there is, however, more to our examining about differences than this. The example of homophobia comes quickly to mind. And not just homophobia, but there's different things. For example, your thing is, kids, especially students, and even more when you become adults, we're going to tend to stick with people who share our interests, beliefs, values, things along that line. We're going to tend to feel more comfortable with people like in our own group. And so then when somebody comes from outside of that, we may feel a little threatened by that. So we have some different beliefs. So for example, if you are a Republican, you hang out only with Republicans, and then a Democrat comes in and they have different belief than you, then you're going to feel a little threatened by that, and vice versa. So we just need to try and eliminate those anti-thoughts against one another and try and come more and more together. And so the final step that Shapiro talks about is the infinite value of each individual. And it kind of goes back to the previous steps, is about valuing everybody. All your students, regardless of whether they are black, they're white, they're gifted, they're struggling, every student has value. They all bring their own stories, their own experiences to your classroom, and they need to be talked to, and they need to be valued very highly. And so it's just talking about in this book how we need to always value all individuals and not demean anyone. So I really like those steps that Shapiro was talking about, how we need to take these steps before we can really change our world. And so going to go into the last bit of readings here, and we are almost done to wrap this up. It's just, basically this reading was all about teachers getting together and creating a newsletter, providing resources for people to read, and what they really talked about was, for example, creating social justice, changing the world, motivating your students to be the best they can be, and change our broken system. And so, on page 28, where it talks about teaching for social justice, it provides some bullet points here. It says some goals for creating social justice, and it says a curriculum grounded in the lives of our students, have open dialogue, a questioning and problem-posing approach, an emphasis on critiquing bias and attitudes, and the teacher of activism for social justice. And just talking about how we need to be involved with our kids' education. Parents, teachers, fellow students, we all need to be involved. And having an open dialogue and questioning why things are the way they are and how can we change that. One thing, being a social studies teacher, I feel like that's something that can be very valuable, is looking back at history and seeing, okay, what did they do and what did not work? What went wrong? Where did it go wrong? Who did what wrong? And then we look to a situation now, it's like, okay, how are we not going to make the same mistake? So, anyway, going back, we're going to, on page 31, it says it's important that children see themselves as actors in the world, not just things acted upon. Basically saying that our students need to be more proactive, more than passive. And how, I think a lot of times in schools, especially younger kids, they feel like they can't make a difference, because their world just revolves around their hometown, their family, their small group of friends. And so they don't feel like what they do has an impact. But I think as teachers, we need to make them believe, and they should believe, that even a small thing can change it. In fact, there's a movie, it's called Paying Forward. It's a great movie with Kevin Spacey in it. It's about this social studies teacher who gets in front of his class and he says, my extra credit time for you for the year is to change the world. And this little boy, who's about 10 years old, he goes out and he changes the world. He does small things by doing nice things for people, paying it forward. Another quote was, on page 34, if we neglect to include an activist component in our curriculum, we cut students off from the possibility of social change. Again, going back saying we need to include, kids need to be active, we need to be involved. Whether it's being involved with your local, a student government, or volunteering, just ways that can help. And then finally, last but not least, the final quote is, discussions begin with matter-of-fact statements about the data, but shifted to an explanation of why particular discrepancies existed. And kind of rehashing, going back with history, is that we need to look at our world, our system, our schools, and see how can we make it better. And I believe that if we can inspire our students to be the best they can be, not just, not be world changers, but just be the best dad, to be the best mom, be the best sibling, be the best friend, let them be who they want to be and push them and be the best versions of themselves. How can we teachers do that? And I believe that the biggest thing is just making them believe that they can. And believing it, because if a child knows that somebody believes in them, that could be enough to motivate them to go out and do something. So, anyway, that is all for tonight, and I hope you've enjoyed this a little bit. Sorry about the video quality, it's a little bit right now, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye. Come on, Becky. Say something to the camera.
Are you recording?
Yes. It is recording right now.
Are you going to submit this?
Possibly, if it's good enough.
Hello! No.
I love you.
Love you too. No.
Okay. Well, we're actually going to get serious now.